I'm Thomas from Meaningful Gigs, and welcome back to another episode of Heroes of the Creative Revolution. In this episode, I sit down for a conversation with DesignOps veteran Dave Malouf as he shares his experiences running DesignOps in-house and as a consultant. He talks about the difference between in-house and consulting for DesignOps, the tension between product and design, horizontal operations, and much, much more. Let's dive in. Well, hi, Dave. Thanks for joining us. Wonderful to speak with you. Really looking forward to chatting. Our viewers really just, let's just start pretty basic and love to know a little bit about your background and within the DesignOps space.
Sure. I've been in some way, shape, or form involved in design operations for about 8 years. Probably got started, you could say, as a practice leader at Rackspace as the head of interaction design. And then most recently, I've been the director of design operations at Northwestern Mutual and Teladoc Health.
Can you kind of speak to comparing the work as an in-house design ops leader and working as more of a design ops consultant?
Sure. I'll start from the consultant perspective. And first of all, I can only speak from my own personal experience, and I'm sure other people may have different experiences if they've also done this work. For me, being a consultant has meant 2 or 3 things. It's meant, first and foremost, being an educator. So really educating people on what is the scope and range and definition and basic activities of design operations. It's meant educating people on where design operations fits on a design team, what leveling it is, and what kinds of activities people could expect. So that's usually like the first level. And then the next level is helping people understand where they're at with their current operations. Whether you have somebody in the role or not, you have operations, and how are they being managed intentionally or unintentionally. So I think it's just a means of going in there and helping people understand where their operations are, and really where the pain points and friction are, so that they can come up with a plan for how they might grow their design operations. And then, the next level of consulting is usually about stepping into the role of a design operations leader, helping them hire people, helping them define the different positions that they need, setting up the different pillars of design operations on those teams, and then acting as a coach for the people who are coming on into those roles.
Gotcha, very interesting.
That's the consulting side of things. The going in-house, it's sort of the same thing, except then you take it one step further and you then run the design operations organization. You're there long term. You're not just setting things up, but you're living it, and needing to be more involved and engaged in different aspects of the different pillars. And it's more about the relationships than it would be as a consultant, because you need to live with the people who you're working with, and you need their support to get things done. So it's sort of just deeper and more.
And you mentioned, at the beginning, like one of the things you have to do on the consulting front is, really go in and educate people on what design ops is. Like, can you speak to us? What are some of the main challenges on that stage and that phase of, a consulting relationship?
Yeah, I'd say there's a few main challenges. The first one is often design leaders, middle managers especially, sort of feel like design operations is what they do and is a core part of their roles and responsibilities. And so when they hear that, oh no, this is what design operations is going to be doing, they feel a little put off. And so I think like that's one challenge is like letting people know that you're there to not take over their responsibilities, but to alleviate these responsibilities from their role so that they can focus more on the things that provide value from their role. You know, they should be focused on the work and on strategy and on vision and things like that. And so they get to do the work instead of worry about timesheets and, billing and licenses and program management and things like that. So that's one big challenge. The other big challenge, I think, is when you're educating people, you aren't just educating the design organization, you're also educating the outside the design organization. And they aren't used to, in many cases, they're not used to an operational role in this way. They have operational roles like in engineering and in product, but they're not called operations, and so they're not used to thinking of them that way. So they don't know where you're going to fit in with them, and quite often design operators do more than what any one of those operational roles do, right? So a technical program manager, for example, is not going to be involved in hiring or career path development the way that a design operations person will, or a program manager or a product owner in the product side isn't going to be involved in like vendor management the way that a design operator would be, right? So the roles are similar, but also, they overlap, but they also extend beyond. So, yeah.
I remember at the recent Henry Stewart DesignOps New York conference, you were mentioning something about like a tension between product and design, and how that impacts DesignOps in particular. Can you explain like what exactly you meant by that?
Yeah, so things have sort of changed. Things are always changing, right? It's the one constant in the world. But there was a point where design was working towards being a parallel to product and engineering. And while organizations clearly set up a CPO, CTO relationship, many organizations have fallen away from the CDO position and have put, even if they have a CDO, that CDO then reports through the chief product officer, right? And so that being three equal partner thing is sort of fallen away. When you report through to someone, it's obviously that you're not an equal to that person, as much as the language might be set up. Oh sure, you're equal. That attempt to kind of make people feel better about it. But in that regard, in terms for an operational role, you'll end up with product operations reporting into the CPO, having either a senior director or even VP title, but the director of design operations reporting into the VP of design. And so like they're brought down a level from each other in that way. And often a head of product operations will assume that the design operations is servant to product operations. And that's where I feel like the tension really is between the two. Instead of the way that I feel it runs best is when design operations is servant to the VP of design, right? And is a partner to all of the leaders of the design organization and, works from that point of view. Now, should they be collaborating together, product and design? Of course, right? But it needs to be done as peers. It can't be done well as one thinking that one goes through the other. So let me show you an example of where this tension came up recently for me. Something pretty benign as onboarding. And there was a strong onboarding process created by product operations, and it was assumed that the design organization would just use that because design is part of product. But there's so much that goes into design that from a product perspective, designers don't product people don't need to understand, but designers do. So the product team's onboarding was this size, but because the design team had to do all of the product onboarding and all of the design onboarding, their onboarding became this, right? And there wasn't really an acknowledgement of that whoa, when you do it this way, you're creating a much longer onboarding experience for the design organization, where we could figure out a way to be much more focused, yet being responsive to, we are in the product organization and we do need to know things that are in the product organization, but not with the same level of fidelity that product managers need to know about the product organization. Design doesn't need to know everything that the product managers need to know from an onboarding perspective. Just like product managers don't need to know everything that design needs to know, so we wouldn't expect that, and they don't, but yet the other way they do, right? And that's part of what it means to not be a peer to, but to be under, right? An organization. And yes, that seems kind of, simplistic, but it kind of grows from there. So.
Another question, because you also mentioned at the conference this thing about horizontal operations. In the first place, what is that? What is horizontal operations? What's unique about it, and how does it differ from, I guess, what we consider normal operations?
Yeah, so if there's horizontal, it means that there's also vertical, right?
Yeah.
So, when you look at a lot of how organizations are structured, they're structured around these portfolios of products, and those portfolios in a way become verticals. Each one is a silo, if you will, of a structure of, people and activities and things like that. Now, there are some horizontal aspects that go across all of those portfolios. You could say something like a platform element, user identity or credentials, authentication, things like that are examples of horizontal scope that goes across all of those portfolios. And that's an easy version to manage. You sort of manage it as its own vertical, and it's responsive to all of the portfolios in a pretty easy way. What I'm talking about, though, in terms of horizontal is how, let's take something like a bank, right? A bank will have standard banking services, checking, savings kind of stuff, and then it will have, investments. We'll just keep those two sort of portfolios, right? And they're run as different P&Ls, and They have different goals, different OKRs, if you will, that they're responsible for. And because of that different P&L perspective, they run really independently to each other. And however, from the user perspective, it's one experience, right? It's not I go from banking to investment. It's I am a customer, with the bank, and I want my services to be aligned with each other, to look the same, to feel the same, to be, interoperable with each other. Easy for me to transfer money from one to the other, easy for me to just log in once, for example, and move between them. And so from a journey perspective, from a service design perspective, if you will, how can we manage operationally that horizontal human experience that people will go through your service? Another example I was just thinking of was around just drawing like music, right? Where, I was thinking of the Apple example. So the Apple example is the physical store and the online store are run as completely separate P&Ls. They have different teams and whatever. But an example where they realize it could be the same customer using both, the store decided, hey, there's no reason why we can't take people's returns here and just mail them back through our bulk mail system to the online store, right? From the end user experience, it's just a return and they can process it that way. But why not let them use the store as this sort of unit offering? And then our advantage of the store is someone comes in, does a return, and sets that off, but then they look at what's in the store and maybe they do an impulse buy of a new case or some whatever, they do some other purchase. The store didn't have to do that to be responsive to this other P&L, but they saw the journey as an opportunity space and then managed it to let that happen, right? And so from an operational perspective, you need to think about, well, how do I make that happen? And how do I draw those connections between the two different verticals so that we can enable this horizontal experience? That makes sense?
Definitely. And I love the examples, especially, both are really clear, the bank, and then especially as you're saying, the Apple example, where it's exactly right, like using the stores as vehicles to help the business overall, not just with one simple vertical, but it's one brand, right? It's one umbrella. So it makes sense to leverage, whatever assets or channels you have available to make operations as a whole much more efficient. Gosh. After all these years of experience in DesignOps and many different places, looking back to your younger self, let's say just starting off in the field, what advice would you give yourself?
To learn more about operations management is the advice I would give myself, since I came from design into operations. It would be learning more about operations management directly as early as I could. That's what I would.
Gotcha. And I'm just curious, what made that shift for you? Was it kind of like you being a designer and realize you were doing a lot of operations, or was it a desire to make that leap? How would you characterize it?
I think I fell into the role, when I was a professor at Savannah College of Art and Design, and then went into working at Rackspace and was really trying to find my footing of where can I provide value from this role of head of interaction design. And it really became about practice management and really about increasing the value of all of the designers on the team, as opposed to driving work streams the way that the other managers were doing. And And that's sort of where it clicked for me, that I really want to help designers become better designers. It's part of what it means to be a professor. It's part of what it means to be a design operator, is you want people to be better at their work, and to provide the most value that they can. And I think I've always had sort of an operational eye towards everything. Like if I look back on my career of being a designer or a design manager, I've always stuck my nose into these operational questions, and really enjoyed that, element of it. So I just had a gravitational pull towards it for myself.
Gotcha. Yeah, pull towards solving problems and making things efficient, right?
Yeah.
It's a great pull to have. Thinking back over the years, I mean, what would you characterize as one of the bigger DesignOps challenges you faced and how you kind of overcame that?
I think the biggest challenge that I like working through is helping the design team align around what is good and how do you evaluate what is good. It's something that has to be done really collaboratively. It has to be done in a way where everyone is aligned to the answer, at least everyone who's there at that point. And it has to be done in a way where as new people come on, they can be onboarded into it in that way. And while I was at Rackspace, we had a really big push towards our design principles. And I would say we did a really good job of creating the principles themselves, but we didn't take it that next step further, which was to make the principles themselves a tool, to make the principles a framework where everyone, not just designers, are truly engaged in it. And when I was at HP Enterprise after that, we took that on again and we came up with the framework. But by the time we were done with the framework, the organization sort of imploded. So I think that this challenge of coming up with the principles and coming up with the framework for the evaluation is just a really big thing. And it takes a time. It takes like 1 to 2 years to do, and to get right, and to really make it something that everyone can sink their teeth into and feel like this is valuable for them, and not just something that, okay, here are these principles, that's a poster on the wall, but like really becomes a tool for helping people evaluate this is quality design for this organization, for this organization's purpose. So I think that's probably the biggest challenge.
Right. Yeah. And as you say, like it can sound kind of simple, like on paper, say what is good and what is bad, but a lot of work and collaboration needs to go into defining it in a way that's clear, repeatable, and, as you say, easy for someone who's being onboarded to pick up and hit the ground running with.
Exactly.
Gotcha. I guess my last question is more along the lines of fun. So within this space, what's the most fun you've had on the job in DesignOps roles?
A couple of ways of answering that. I love setting up the team offsites. I think it's like one of my favorite parts of my job is to like create the offsites. When I was at Northwestern Mutual, we were in the middle of the, in the lockdown, and we were in the middle of the lockdown, and we we couldn't be together, yet like we needed to find a way to make it feel like we were together. And it seems so simple, but like I went on to Uber Eats and created a business account and sent everyone a voucher so that they can all get an Uber Eats of their own from their house, right? And then we took lunch together on video, and it was like just at a moment where everybody felt so separated from each other, it was a moment where like we came together, even if it was on video, and like we said, "Oh, what did you get? What did you get? Like, like what kind of food were," and it just became a thing. And then it was even kind of a little depressing but funny for the one guy who like lived in the boonies and couldn't get anything. It was like because Uber Eats didn't serve his area. Um, and we figured out another way where we can still, support that person, kind of thing. But then, just also helping in-person stuff too. At Teladoc, setting up leadership team stuff and whatnot. I don't know, that's one of my favorite things to do. It's just bring people together.
Sounds great. Yeah. And, food is great power bringing people together in person, and as you demonstrated remotely too, right?
Yeah.
That's great. Well, Dave, I want to thank you for taking the time to speak with us today. Speak with me today. It's been great. I think, huge insights on what it means to actually operate as a DesignOps consultant and to face some of the challenges that, go along with standing up design operations within a team. So thank you for your time. Is there anything else you want to say to me or audience?
No, just thank you, Meaningful Gigs. It's been great to work with you all and to be able to help y'all. So it's been great.